Good afternoon and welcome back to another ironic introduction to another video. Today I'm going to be giving my impressions on Immortal Hawk and Immortal Abomination. These two champions do look really awesome. I'm not going to be doing like a proper breakdown just because saving time, etc. I'm a little bit busy these days, but I did want to throw out my 2 cents because these two champions do look really interesting, and I have some things I like and some things I really am a little more critical of. So Immortal Hawk is pretty cool because I think that he is going to really give off that Hulk impression of really just pummeling your opponents and feeling like this unstoppable machine and just really going full Hulk rage. And I do really like that. I think that's super cool. Of course, he's got that poison immunity. His regeneration rate cannot be decreased or increased by outside sources. I thought that was interesting. I totally respect the cannot be decreased. That's like a really good response to saying like he can't be petrified, he can't be reverse healed from like Human Torch's incinerates. I was a little surprised by the or increased by outside sources. Now I don't know if this is to give us benefit so that when we see him as a defender in the future, we don't see crazy things there, or if it's because they didn't want specifically like the 15% increased healing mastery to have a massive effect here. I don't think either of those are like absolutely massive, but it is nice, at least from seeing him as a defender perspective, that it also can't be increased. I do think that's more of a common case than mastery situation, which would benefit the attacker, but I think it's a pretty good trade-off there. He gains a bonus attack rating based on how much health he has lost throughout the entire fight. And this is based on 200% of his health because he can end up gaining like all of his health back. He gets rage stacks for hitting with rage. These do decay over time when he's not hitting multiple rage attacks. It's pretty similar to Crowd Frenzy, it's just rage instead. But for each rage stack he has, he's dealing additional physical damage and direct damage to himself unless he's doing that medium one. And recoil mastery is like properly adjusted for in this rage as well in order to kind of be part of his kit. That way they are encouraging you to run recoil and benefit from it without totally getting wrecked by it. So he does look like he's going to be a champion with really good recoil reactions, not in the sense that you're mitigating the recoil damage so much as you're just directly benefiting from it instead. So I think that's pretty neat. And then the whole point is essentially that once you hit 0, or you would instead die, you have been scaling up gamma radiation from all the damage Hulk inflicts to himself. And this, while boosting your attack, etc., also gives you all kinds of benefits from like your signature ability. But also just like in the form of attack, etc., and just crazy amounts of damage and pushing through. But once you would hit 0, instead of hitting 0, 15% of your health consumed as gamma radiation triggers a 8-second immortality passive, which causes you to become unblockable for 8 seconds. And then this does have a 50-second cooldown, so it's not like something permanent, but essentially at the end of that 8 seconds, you recover a huge amount of health plus the amount of health you have from gamma radiation, which is just absolutely insane. This triggers over 1 second, so it's a really fast heal. All things said, I do think that at the very least, I think Immortal Hawk might be a really good Alliance Quest champion. Like, as long as there's no heal block, he might be really powerful. That's just kind of like something I immediately see. That's my gut instinct, where essentially players will just hammer into the opponent over and over again, trigger the immortality heal, wait for the heal to go off 8 seconds later, stall, and then timeout. And I know mentioning the timeout is, a touchy subject for a lot of people, but as long as it's in the game, it's worth mentioning. But that's gonna be crazy awesome. Or they'll use the 8 seconds of unblockable, just pummel into the opponent, and just bypass a lot of nodes and mechanics through brute force, which is really cool because that's literally what Hulk kind of embodies. The only thing is also that while active, any damage prevented by immortality consumes an equal amount of gamma radiation instead. This does not apply to self-inflicted damage. So that means that even though you're inflicting damage on yourself from the rage attacks, you are not losing that extra healing. So there might have been some kind of like counterintuitive nature, like, oh, if I use this 8-second window of unblockability, I'm reducing my healing. They've accounted for that here, which I think is really important. But essentially, Immortal Hulk is just this damage beast. And his specials are pretty similar. His heavy attacks will refresh rage timer and double the amount of rage stacks he has. This is really going to help you combo into really, really big damage. It's also going to be really important for comboing heavy attacks into specials. They even give that extra tip. But the special one will have a 60% chance to stun. Special 2 is a 100% chance to stun. That's kind of your big spam there if you're either doing SP2 or special 3, depending on where you're at in the rotation. And then special 3 adds a flat 10% strength to gamma radiation, inflicts a petrify debuff as well. So this is a really good option for when you're like literally waiting for the cooldown on Immortality cooldown, because it is a 50-second cooldown, so you've got quite a bit of time waiting on there. And then his Awakenability is pretty solid as well. So I know that was mostly a champion breakdown. I apologize for that, but he does seem pretty straightforward, and I think what they're trying to do here is really, really good. And honestly, just looking at the numbers here and looking at the overall kit, I think he's going to feel really, really good to play. I think he's going to be this just absolute bruiser coming into the contest and just smacking through for damage. And I think for once we actually have a new champion to just contest with the likes of Corvus Glaive for just raw damage output, where you just come in, pummel the opponent, and then break out. I think that the 50-second cooldown on Immortality means that you could use it maybe more than once in a fight, but the reality is if the fight lasts longer than 50 seconds, the 50 seconds after that Immortality, then you really don't want to bring Immortal Hawk. That's just my gut instinct, is like that 50 seconds tells me they don't want you triggering that more than once, except for like extraneous situations. But I'm going to say for the most part, you really only need to trigger it once if you're using him in the right situations, and just the raw damage output he should be dealing, because it does look like he should be dealing quite a bit of damage, should be enough to power through the fights. I think he's going to be really, really good in Alliance War. I think he's going to be really, really good in Alliance Quest. This literally looks to me like a Corvus Glaive that ramps every fight. Now, he might be potion intensive in Alliance War, but in Alliance Quest, you can just take with lower damage output and, like I said, time out, wait out the fight, and it's going to just be really, really good. Because imagine you got 25 rage stacks by roughly 300. That's almost 7,500 damage, just additional burst damage every time you hit the opponent once he's properly ramped up. That's crazy. And then you think about the fact that you trigger Immortality, and I don't see any special 3 conditions here, which is huge, because a lot of times when they say, oh, you can't be killed, allowing him preventing death, a lot of times they say except for special 3s. This doesn't say special 3, so as far as I'm concerned, this means you can tank special 3s, which means you can just go 100% all in with Hulk, get as much damage as you can, stack a few heavies against the opponent in the corner, and then just go all in, go unblockable, go into an SP2 for a stun, and then go into an SP1 chain, stunning them as long as you can, letting recoil trigger Immortality. Once you trigger Immortality, you know you can tank a special 3, you can let the stun drop, tank the special 3, come out of it, pummel them with unblockable, and then, pause, or if the fight's even not over at that point. I think my biggest concern is just kind of like the interaction with, if you go immortal and then you kill the opponent within this 8-second window and you're sitting at 1 HP. That's probably my biggest concern. I do really hope that if you go immortal, from an attacker's perspective, I hope that if you go immortal and then you kill the opponent while you're immortal, that you get the health anyways. But from a defender perspective, I hope that's not the case, because then you can push Immortal Hulk to immortal phase and then just wait and intentionally lose the fight so that he's at 1 health when you start. And I think how that interaction plays out is going to be really, really important. So that's my thoughts on Immortal Hawk. Next, I want to jump into Immortal Abomination. Similarly complicated here. Similarly complicated here. Essentially, you are going to be applying poisons on impact. If you reach 10 poisons, it converts into an acid burn. That's kind of where your big damage numbers are going to be coming from. Of course, he has 100% poison resistance, and this is massive because that means just like perma healing, which is going to be really, really nice. It's nice to have another perma heal champion. I always love those. Yeah, always love those. Honestly, any champion that can heal from willpower as is really nice. So it's nice to see 2 new additions to the attrition-friendly roster. I'm super stoked. Makes me want both of these champions just to play around with. But after stacking the poisons, and the poisons themselves, they're not too shabby, but really the main damage value here is in stacking 10. You trigger this big acid burn damage over time, and you gain that unblockable, which is what's going to let Abomination really get his damage rotation in. And along the way, he's also going to be inflicting himself with poisons, or if the opponent is hitting him a lot, inflicting himself with poisons that way as well. And this is going to make him tankier. Not crazy tanky, but tankier. It's also going to give him a pretty good amount of extra block, just in the form of weakness debuffs applied on the opponent. His special 1 gives him those petrifies as well as additional self-poisons. His special 2 activates a special toxic aura. This is kind of like Omega Red. It feels very similar in the sense that you drop it and it gives you proximity damage. Essentially, when he's near the opponent, he inflicts 1 poison every second. And, you know, stacking multiple poisons is how you trigger that acid burn. Additionally, each stack of Toxic Aura, which is affected by how many poisons or how many times you launch this, triggers or increases the rate at which you increases that poison. So dropping SP2 multiple times is going to be really good, and I imagine the standard healing you're just getting from willpower is going to really help mitigate recoil here, so that's nice as well. And then his special 3 gives you an acid burn as well, and each stack of toxic aura you have, so if you've stacked up multiple toxic auras, will give you multiple acid burn effects, and this is actually like your only way to get multiple acid burn effects. His Awakenability is nice, but it's definitely not needed. So I wanted to go over those because the first thing I want to point out is that when you apply an acid burn by converting 10 poisons, it prevents additional poison effects. And this just really sucks to see. I do think Abomination's damage output still looks pretty good here, especially from the damage over time and the unblockable opening from Acid Burn. Honestly, just having an unblockable opening is really nice. Yes, it's not permanent like Aegon's or Nick Fury's, but any kind of unblockable opening, especially by something you can reach just by proximity, because contact with the opponent means you can hit into their block multiple times until you've triggered an Acid Burn, and then pummel into them for an acid burn unblockable. And it's a really good way to help mitigate block damage or parry damage, or deal with stun immune champions, or one eye open for the nodes where you don't want to be stunning them. This would give you an alternative opening as well. So while it will be something you have to work for, it is something really worth noting. I think probably one of the subtler, most powerful parts of this kit is that unblockable on acid burn and finding an alternative opening right there. Personally, same goes for Immortal Hawk. That alternative opening is massive. Any kind of unblockable attack has a lot of really good potential. Just watch out if you're fighting like Red Guardian or something and an unblockable attack ends up getting you stunned. But otherwise, I just don't like seeing prevents additional poison effects, because what that means is that once you've triggered the acid burn, you are finally getting your damage over time effect, but you then have to continue waiting before you can trigger another acid burn for 5 seconds. And that's kind of long, given the fact that one of your major ways of applying debuffs or poisons over time is from Toxic Aura, and Toxic Aura has a base 10-second window, plus like a lot of baiting out specials, slowy fights, and like the really low rate on the 15% chance to contact. It just doesn't feel like you're going to be applying those poisons as fast as you could. I think it's still going to be pretty quick. I just think that it could feel better. And I understand that this is probably to prevent him just from doing absolutely nuts damage from stacking multiple acid burns. Part of me just wishes, that someone had done the math behind the scenes for maybe an aggressive Abomination and a less aggressive Abomination, and then found like the median value there for how much the direct damage could have been if they had let you stack multiple acid burns. So yes, like the first acid burn wouldn't feel as substantial, but the expectation would be for you to be stacking 2 or 3 or 4 etc., to be getting crazy, just nuts damage in the long run. And then maybe even make it so that like an aggressive player doing a really good rotation could get even more damage than this, but a passive player playing a slow rotation would get less damage than this. I think that would have been really, really cool, and I think it misses kind of one of the aspects that could have made this champion a lot more fun. I do think that any champion that does this debuffing or massive damage things, one of the things that makes them really, really cool and really, really fun to play is watching the proper ramp up, watching the proper stacking. It's kind of like one of the reasons why I like Human Torch with Nova Flames. It's really cool watching him get a ton of smolders and then watch his Incinerates just bleed into the opponent, watching like 8 or 9 Nova Flames on them just absolutely wreck, or playing Nick Fury and watching a ton of bleed stack up. It's a really, really good and satisfying feeling, and I think this is just a missed opportunity. That was like the first thing I noticed, but otherwise Abomination is really good. This is probably going to be a very powerful champion. Just the fact that his poison damage is absolutely off the chart is going to be nice as well. I think my second thing is just for Acid Wash, because this does look like an Acid Wash champion. That's like my other note, is that the Acid Burn passive prevents additional poison effects. And the reason I don't like that is because if you're using Immortal Abomination to counter Acid Wash, where you want to have a poison effect on the opponent, I just question and want to double check and make sure that this damage will still trigger for the full amount against an Acid Wash opponent. That's like the first thing that comes to mind when it comes to poison damage, is champions that you want to be poisoning for that damage. So as long as this is full damage and you're getting full damage throughout, then that's fine. But I do imagine at the very least in that 5-second window, Immortal Abomination's attacks are not going to be doing full damage. So that's a miss as well from me. I think that's just kind of like, this is already a relatively niche utility and niche damage over time effect. I would have liked it if an Acid Burn passive counted as a poison, for nodes and effects like that. And maybe it will, maybe it's intended to be the same, but for me reading it, I immediately saw something different. So I know I've touched a lot of criticisms on both Immortal Hawk and Immortal Abomination. Not my intention. Both of these champions look fantastic. Immortal Hawk is just the absolute rage-infused gamma radiation beast coming in, and I really do think this is like the next contender for Corvus Glaive. I don't think any of the other previous Corvus Glaive or This Is Corvus Glaive champions really met the mark. I think this is like the next short fight burst champion entering the game that has a lot of potential, where their entire gimmick is a lot of damage, really, really fast, without dying. That's what Immortal Hawk looks like to me, making the mark of Corvus Glaive and Captain Marvel movie, where the whole point is to burst the opponent down before your burst window closes out. And then Immortal Abomination is this next damage over time effect. This feels, kind of like an Omega Red Nick Fury conglomeration in the form of poison, and that is a really cool effect I'm really excited for. I want both of these champions because they look super attrition friendly, and I cannot wait. Sorry this took so long, but as always, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you all later. Peace.